Greetings and welcome to the Real FERM podcast. Thank you so much for joining. This week, we're continuing with my favorite, most passionate, interesting of mine topic of the day. And this time we're taking off the guardrails, the bumpers, the safety hazard railing, and going full into the woo-woo, because that's how I like to do it too. We're going to talk about three. So if you didn't see the last episode, it had to do with the Jake Barber interview, but unfortunately, I don't know if it was right after I recorded that or shortly after, but I did not get to see the full Jake Barber interview until afterwards. So I have a lot of stuff to say more about that, but most importantly, the whole consciousness, spirituality aspect of this. I'm really been philosophizing and deep thinking about this relation to my own experiences, specifically with psychedelics. We'll get into that. And again, involving the great and powerful Dr. Stephen Greer. Let's get into it. All right. The purpose, let me just, before I continue, if anyone has found their way here or has been watching somehow, and let me just explain the purpose of this program, if you will. This is just commentary for entertainment for the most part. It's fully for entertainment. I'm not saying I'm educating, or it's just I'm talking about what I'm interested in, and I think I like to get it out, and I don't have any friends that are as interested as I am to talk about with, so this is how I get it out. Let's put it that way. And it's just making connections from my own experiences and just giving my opinions on what I believe, just to have fun and create a conversation around it, maybe within the comments section, if you like. I will say, particularly on this one, if you are a super skeptic, you don't like the spirituality, the woo-woo of it all, you're not going to like this. And, but, if you want to leave a shitty, obnoxious comment about how I'm an idiot, please feel free, go right ahead for the engagement helpings of the algorithms. That would be cool. So you can do that. But so the last episode, I kind of as I've been getting back into doing these solo podcast episodes, I'm still getting getting back used to it. I was never really good at it beforehand, honestly, but I'm trying to be more prepared and to just get deeper into things and having more of an outline and try to stay on topic, although that's very difficult, especially with this, because there's just so much information and my mind goes jump to all the different things that are potential possibilities of thoughts that I've been having. But I do have a guide here in front of my face. So all that to say, what I said on the one before this, first of all, NewsNation, I didn't really trash them, but I was kind of sitting, I was being a fence sitter, just straight up. It's what I was just kind of towing the line, because I let the internet, Reddit people, I guess, influence my perspective, assuming that they're going to watch this, which not many people watch this or listen to this, so I really don't have anything to worry about in terms of getting blowback, but just in the machinations of my mind, that's how I end up perceiving it. So what I'm saying is, I was being extra, I was giving into the potential skeptics, and I was being sympathetic to the hardcore skeptics as I was talking about things and kind of like assuming that they were watching, like, oh, this is what you guys say about this. But really, I'm here to say I pretty much fully, no, I don't pretty much, I fully believe Jake Barber. I fully believe Stephen Greer. I am all down for the Galactic Federation and the spiritual nature of the extraterrestrials. We'll get into all that. I do not know, because I can't. We're moving into the spiritual realm, or the realm of consciousness. It's really about consciousness, but spiritual is, pretty much just another term for that. But consciousness is more of a scientific underpinning to it. So yeah, last time I was just kind of, I was saying how NewsNation was disappointing people, and it was. I was commenting on the fact that people were upset about the NewsNation thing. But I'm here to revoke all that, mainly because when I watched the full Jake Barber interview, I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I still understand why people were pissed, and they said NewsNation, they made us, they hyped it up for nothing, and it's a bunch of trash. That's not true at all. However, the way they strung it together in that newsy segment that they did before they released the full interview, I see how that can be misunderstood. But the full interview is wonderful. It gives you the full context. It's over 2 hours. Again, if you somehow are watching this and you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you do. Although we will watch some clips. I will pull up some clips of it to get some talking points off. A priori, I don't think I know the Latin phrase, but upon those clips of which I'm going to speak upon, and we'll go over that, and I have a lot to say about that. So it's just I have a new respect for NewsNation after seeing that, also because Ross was a great interviewer. Like, the questions he asked, he was very thorough. He hit all the right points. I mean, I don't know, that it's really unfortunate that they made that clickbaity news style 60 minutes version of it and released it first, obviously, because the views, and that's just how society works, and journalism and news outlets. And NewsNation, I have in general, I have more respect for, just seeing more of the stuff that they put out. And since I posted the last one, there's been not only the full Jake Barber interview, he did a live Q&A, which I remember Ross addressing people calling out that he was in the chat. I believe it was happening, that it was like purposeful disinformation, that kind of thing. It's just funny. And then there's a few other things that I haven't fully watched yet, which is some other interviews with other people adjacent to it. And I guess they're talking about Jake Barber and some other stuff. But yeah, I mean, they have a full website. I mean, it's like a legitimately pretty well done, independent journalistic news source, I must say. And they have the balls to go with the UFO stuff, and they get these exclusive drops with Jake Barber. So shout out to NewsNation, shout out to Ross Coulthart. Fucking grade A Australian bloke, I must say myself. But anyway, I got a little off track. I knew this was going to happen. I write these notes, and the more I look at them, the more I get tripped up, but I do need to look at them to get on track. But I also like to go with my free-flowing state of stream of consciousness. Excuse me. So, but before we get into like the first start watching the Jake Barber clips, and then I'm going to talk more about the whole consciousness thing in relation to the NHI, the ETs, and then bringing it to my own experience with psychedelics, which I'm quite frankly, I'm surprised that not a lot of people bring this up Actually, nobody has in terms of the big stories. But at the same time, I understand because drugs and illegal drug. I mean, that's nothing compared to illegal weapons private aerospace contractors using back engineered weaponized alien technology, extraterrestrial advanced. Anyway, and yeah, the hippie, it's all been smeared, so I get that, but it's something's there, and I'm gonna get into that. That's really what comes from me in this episode. That I think that's the most original. If you're looking for something out of my mind that's like, what does this guy have to say that's not something I already heard with the spin on it, it's that part. So stay tuned for that. I'll have all the time stamps, time codes, chapters in the YouTube if you want to skip to that. But I'm going to still give my opinion about the other stuff I'm talking about. And let's see here. Oh, yeah, so I'm going to reiterate before we go into it. As I said before, but I keep expecting there might be some stray newer people, and to just keep this in the information stream of these episodes. I come from a hard science background. I have advanced graduate degrees in physics, not the most advanced, not PhD. I almost did. I got accepted into a program that I wanted to make money quicker. And now COVID happened. That's all another story. But master's in physics. And then I dabbled in a lot of things, which we'll get into later, that opened my mind. So pretty much there was a point where I was basically atheistic, but then completely... So I'm in the middle. Anyway, the point is, if you're someone that's kind of that believes, but you maybe that'll help you. I'm someone who believes, that comes from an academic science background. But if you're someone that doesn't believe and is looking to hate and say you're an idiot, your degrees are worth nothing, you can pay, whatever, then you can do that too. So it goes both ways. Just once again, reiterate that background. I'll talk more about my background and my beliefs a little bit later in full detail. Let's start. Let's see. Anything else? Oh yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it back up. Why I'm about to just fully forget as I said earlier, lose the guardrails. Just go fully saying I fully believe this stuff. I don't know, because until I have a full CE5 experience, which I do plan on trying at some point. I cannot know this, but I believe it like I believe like Christians believe in Jesus Christ, I guess you'll say. And I do believe in Jesus Christ in a way. In a very specific way, as I will as I'll say later. Anyway, let's move on. But yeah, I keep saying let's move on, but I keep forgetting to mention the whole point of me mentioning that was I have no reputation. I have nothing to lose. That's why I have no problem sounding crazy and just leaning into this and not trying to appease potential viewers or listeners that might be skeptical and don't want to hear someone that just fully believes everything. Not that I fully believe everything blindly, but it's just the way I lean. I don't care. I'm not in academia anymore. I don't have a job that is relying on that. I'm nobody. I don't give a shit. I believe in extraterrestrial higher consciousnesses. It is what it is. Now, let's get into the Jake Barber full interview. There's a couple of clips that are in there that relate to what I'm talking about, that I'm going to talk about earlier, and just because it was more in detail, more nuanced, and the fuller context was there as opposed to the shorter, bite-sized version that was originally posted that I was kind of reacting to on the last week. It's like sorry, I really should. It's really hard to write on this thing. Sometimes I scribble and then I'm like, wait, what did I actually write? But yeah. The whole thing about people, how Ross and NewsNation were hyping this up originally, saying it was groundbreaking story. This is so like fresh and new, and it's gonna blow the community open, like that kind of thing. That was the whole narrative that I was arguing against or being sympathetic in the last episode, because people were disappointed. But now that I've watched the full interview, it kind of is groundbreaking, because this is the first time I've heard a public whistleblower going so in depth. Excuse me, I still have a little bit of the nasal thing. Going so in depth with the consciousness aspect and the spiritual side of it, in addition to just, I saw this thing that has this crazy physical capability and it might be advanced or extraterrestrial, NHI or whatever. He talks about the psionics and that division of agents that are there, part of the team. I mean, it is groundbreaking. So it is unfortunate that NewsNation got that reputation, but it's really just the vocal minority. Most people don't really have, but they're loud and proud about that on the Reddit threads and the YouTube comments. But yeah, and it just gives more credence to the whole Stephen Greer thing, who I've looked even more and more further deeper into, and he is a wild boy in the best way. But this whole Jake Barber account is really, and he talks about Stephen Greer, meeting him and having respect for him in the interview. We're going to watch a clip about that as well. Before I go into the clips, though, I do want to play a little devil's advocate here. I know I said I'm taking the guardrails off, but just as my inner skeptic, my inner scientist, I cannot imagine a situation as to how this is, if he's lying or if this is some kind of grift. The level of detail he goes into, corroborated with other people independently having similar stories, whether through writing over the decades or from witness accounts. They haven't gone into detail on as a public platform as Jake Barber has gone on this particular subject, as far as I'm aware. But you've certainly heard things about this type of remote viewing and all this consciousness stuff. I just can't imagine how everyone would be making the bigger conspiracy here would be, what is their motive for making all this up, if that's what they're doing? And if they're not making it up, and they're are they exaggerating it for some publicity? There's the Skywatcher thing, which I mentioned before, which they recently debuted their first thing on X, like a 30-minute promotional. This is a whole other thing. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I just want to go on a slight tangent, and the only reason why is because I keep getting those damn r/aliens, r/UFO, whatever subreddit notifications, and I saw one that was like, some guy made a post saying this is bullshit, and it was linked to the Skywatcher thing before I even watched it, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And he's going off about Jake Barber's a fraud, whatever, the grifter. This is a for-profit business, and I watched the whole thing. I genuinely, if somebody has some information as to how this is making exorbitant amounts of money to offset the cost of sounding absolutely insane to most people, please let me know, because I truly don't see how this is some type of fraud or grift. Also, he mentioned it's venture capitalist funded, which by definition, venture capitalists are investing for growth and to make more money. So that we live in a capitalist society. You have to make money, especially, and if your whole thing is trying to spread awareness about UAP and the knowledge you have, you still, unless you're already billions of dollars in wealth, even though those people still somehow always have a desire to keep making money, which I have not understood yet because I'm not there. But even if it's just like, you can't, it doesn't compute. So I don't know, but people are still hating on it no matter what. They always find something like, follow the money. I can't follow the money. There's no money to be followed. If I'm missing something, please let me know. I truly can't see it. Anyway, before I go too far into extreme tangents, let's get to the first clip I want to play here. And it is, we're going to do several clips from this interview, short ones, and then a couple from the latest, of course, Stephen Greer podcast episode about the whole last week of information that came out. And lots of interesting stuff. So here's the first one where he's talking about we're really going to break open the whole consciousness thing, because this is the most fascinating thing to me. And that is I remember when I was recording the first episode, that's what I remember saying, that not the egg thing, where it was the Akon, where he talks about having this spiritual, emotional experience. That was the most compelling story of it all. So he gets a little deeper into it and just in general. So let's hear what this one is all about.
Well, my work, coincidentally, shortly after that, led me in support of another particular part of the program, which deals directly with looking at this piece right here, which is there a component on the summoning side that we call, and the operation side of these non-human craft, that has to do with consciousness, or at least a field of consciousness that perhaps humans can tap into, and maybe all beings in the universe can tap into.
Summoning craft, perhaps all humans can tap into. Now, this is just I believe, I would like to believe, no, I believe that this is the beginning of a new spiritual revolution. Excuse me. And it's especially with the stuff that Dr. Greer has talked about, which he has been talking about for literally decades. And then along comes Jake Barber, unless Jake Barber is a secret agent of Dr. Greer for his, random devil's advocate thing that pops into my mind, but I believe this. That was just for fun jokes. This whole consciousness married with technology is like it's like a spiritual revolution. The more people that are learning about this and are getting hyped about it, like myself, more people are going to be talking about it. And it just makes the most sense as to if paranormal stuff in general, anything supernatural, consciousness, and people or peoples of other origins that have evolved to such a way that their consciousness are elevated and they can affect things in ways that do not require the speed of light, this sort of thing. And here we have a military guy that worked in special operations for private aerospace company contracts that may or may not have gone rogue and done illegal things. But yeah, I mean, that's just the opening. Let's watch another one. I got a lot more to talk about. More of the psionics stuff.
When they mentally, telepathically engaged with whatever this intelligence was, what did they tell you about it?
Well, that they refer to it as a they in a very spiritual nature, something like angels and demons, Let's say there's certainly good energies and bad energies, but it's talked of in a very nebulous way like this, because no one really knows what it is. No one, especially on the psionic side, we're still trying to figure that out. We're still trying to figure out exactly what it is. And there's probably a number of things going on. There might be biological entities, and we use the word biological for a very specific reason. Biological, we limit it to that because we aren't here to imply that it is sentient or has a consciousness. We really don't know that. There is some evidence that shows it might be the case that these are something like soft tissue drones or lab meat that was programmed in order to operate craft.
Meet robots.
Meet robots.
So we're getting more of an idea of how these programs work, where they're using teams of psionic agents, or what may historically been called psychics, I guess, for a lack of a better term. Psionics, I guess, would be that better term in this case, where they have some kind of innate, enhanced ability that may be within all of us, all humans, anyone that has a human level of conscious capability, depending on our neural wiring and DNA that leads to it, all this type of stuff. But there's some people that are either trained or were birthed with this gift of a more of an intuitive, higher consciousness tuning of frequency, conscious waves to tune into this type of phenomenon that most people live their lives never experiencing. And the military or other advanced technology, private, whatever sectors, are using these people to commune and summon, as he says, these crafts. And and then furthermore, touching on a thing that I've not only heard from other people, that other whistleblowers, but also like reading stuff from the CIA and just like random stuff online that was posted way before this about the theory that the Greys and other beings were pilots of these crafts, were not really the actual original conscious entity, you can say, but they're rather, as he said, biologic, like drones, like avatars for the consciousness that are operating them in whatever remote location. So again, just more stuff that just connects all the dots. Thanks to Jake Barber coming out with all this information. And again, shout out to NewsNation, Ross Coulthard, for bringing the story to us in such a great way. Thankfully, in this full-length interview, you got to have the full context. This is why TikTok is a scourge on the knowledge of the public, especially our youth, because nobody's taking the time to consume all this information at once. They just want rapid-fire, random stuff to swamp their brains. Sorry, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. It just popped into my head. So yeah, we've got plenty more, and a lot of the stuff that I'm touching on while watching these clips, I'm gonna go deeper into in a little bit here. Let's see the next part.
I know that high pulse microwave weapons are being used to bring down some of these craft.
Yes.
Now, how often was it done where the objects would land on their own accord, and how often was it done that weapons would be used?
Yeah, I can't tell you how often. I can tell you that they are brought down both ways, that they are invited to land by the Psionics team. Other times they are invited in by the Psionics team, but then HPMs, which are high-powered microwave weapons, are deployed, and they have an effect where they can disrupt the flight pattern of the object, and when it is an object, sometimes it's not, and it can result in that aircraft being forcibly brought down.
So here he's discerning two separate ways in which they acquire these crafts. One being summoning, and another one being using force, which, as we'll talk a bit more in depth later, is the polar opposite of what should be being done according to Dr. Stephen Greer. The summoning part, as we'll come to know, and as Jake Barber also acknowledges, is Dr. Greer has been working on his own protocol for many years now, which he calls CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And we're going to get nice into that. And but it is important to note that he is openly admitting to using summoning, which Dr. Greer does not like that term, because he's very keen on making it clear that these beings, he literally calls them people, the NHI people, you should treat them like any other beings of consciousness. And also they're just more powerful, but that's not really his point. And but you don't summon. It's not like your servant where you're like, come, Mr. Belvedere, bring me some appetizer or what? Appetizer. Hors d'oeuvres. I thought that's what I meant to say. A little more fancy. Yeah, but that's the way Jake Barber's using the term he's using, probably coming from his background and what they had, the terms they used in his programs. And what's more concerning? What's more concerning is the forceful bringing them down. And Dr. Greer has a lot to say about that. So I highly recommend looking more into Dr. Greer if you're interested in that. We're going to touch upon that later, but just something to note. All right, so going back, and in addition, connecting as well to the Greer history and lore. Lore is probably not the best term if you believe it, but his bibliography, his catalog of information. This next clip ties into that very well as well.
So the question in your mind was this a rogue operation? What did you find? What did you find out?
Well, I found out that the people at the top claimed to know nothing about it, and they didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, and they advised me to leave it alone.
This leads you to the possibility that this was a rogue operation. Somebody was tasking you to do things, dangerous things, where your life had been in danger and your team members had been in danger.
This is a good example for everyone watching as to how something like this could be kept secret, because you could think of me as, again, I'm just a security and transportation specialist. Everything else I'm speaking to and that I know about, I gained just from my own knowledge and interest of being in the environment. But I speak to a lot of things that aren't necessarily my specialty. I'm on the very fingertips of this thing, which is part of why you haven't heard from me before. I operate in the shadows.
And here we come to the admission of probable employment by rogue operations. And then he goes on to talk about the way the secrets are kept and how everything's compartmentalized and the finger doesn't know what the shoulder's doing, etc. Great analogy, by the way. Very articulate, Jake Barber is, as of course he is. But, yeah, again, Dr. Greer has been saying this for a while. The people who are the most nefarious and concerning people who the government and the news outlets and all what you're seeing by mainstream media, Tic Tac, all of these disclosure things that are so mainstream that it's like, wow, this is actually being put out there. According to Dr. Greer, those are all false flags isn't the right word, but they're all, those objects are not really, or he claims they're not, but I'll just say, according to what I'm assuming, they're probably not NHI or alien or extraterrestrial crafts. They are the stuff of these rogue private aerospace, black project, black budget, gone rogue, doing their own thing illegally, and they're being detected by military, and the military doesn't know, so they see it and they're like, what the hell is this? And that's a whole separate rabbit hole in and of itself. But here we have Jake Barber admitting to how he's seen, and with his own investigation into, again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's just so much information packed into that interview. He has this whole situation where he starts questioning the line of who's in charge, and like seeing what, because of a violent and adversarial, two different groups were trying to get these what were they called, the laptop tough books, I think that's what they were called. They had some secret information, and there was potentially weapons and like gun weapons involved in terms of like, you need to get this because someone else is going to get it. And so there's this whole conflict within the organizations that are trying to get them. It's not just, oh, it's the military. It's like there's a whole swamp of bullshit going on that's sketchy involving this type of technology and information relating to this technology. And this is what Dr. Greer has been saying all along. Now, as we transition into the next main topic of discussion for this episode, which is my own experiences with spirituality, higher consciousness, and my background and how I was raised and all that. There's one more before I go into that, because it kind of weirdly transitions into my childhood, and it's this part.
You could say he was the ambassador for this area for the GATE program, which was a program for gifted and talented kids. And my personal experience with that was great. It was, I just got pulled out of normal class a couple of times a day, at least twice, and got to go to a private classroom where I had one-on-one time with a staff member there who played a lot of games with me inside and outside, and we ran a number of creative classes together. And outside of that, I also, after school, I would attend, I had a private art teacher, I learned music. And so I felt like I had a unique education experience as a kid.
When I was watching this and I heard him begin to talk about this, my ears perked up and my eyes lit up, and I was like, holy shit. Because I was also in this program. Now, as a child, not specifically, let me explain. So I came upon the conspiracy, we'll call it, because we really don't know, but this kind of further confirms it now that since I've seen this. I forgot how I learned about it. I think I was just like going down the rabbit hole on Reddit, and I saw someone talking about this GATE, gifted and talented education program, and how like all these weird things that they would do as a child, and these kids had these suppressed memories, and when they were adults, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then it would lead you to like these theories of like, if you were involved in this program, this is what you would remember. And I was like, I fucking remember this. So I'm 31 right now. When I was going to elementary school, they had just changed the name. I remember this. I went to elementary school in Connecticut. And because I remember my sister, who's 4 years older than me, was in the same program. At that time, they had already changed it to talented and gifted, not gifted and talented education. It was called TAG, not GATE, but TAG, TAG, talented and gifted. And then when I got to school, I remember they had changed it because the parents were, I guess there was some outrage with the parents, because if their kids weren't in it, they were like, well, then you can't say my kid isn't talented and gifted because you're not in the talented and gifted program. So they named it ALP, Advanced Learning Program. Now, it wasn't, I think by the time I was in it, it wasn't as specific as what he's talking about here, but I know for a fact that it's the same line of whatever the hell they were trying to do. Because I remember specific weird things about it. The majority, I was very young, so the memories are very hazy, but, and I'm also, let me say, I'm not trying to say that I was some like brilliant genius. There was a good amount of kids that were chosen for it. It was just like if you were naturally good at math or whatever, and you were just slightly ahead of the other kids, which I was always that nerdy kind of always good at school, traditional schoolwork. Than the average kid. I wasn't some brilliant genius. I'm not trying to say that. But, so the majority when I was when I was older, like in the 5th grade, I just remember being in a group of kids that wouldn't go to the normal classes, and we would go to these ALP classes where they would teach mostly normal, just like normal school stuff, but just at a higher level. But when I was younger, I do remember very strange tests that I cannot explain. Psychological things. The one that stuck out to me the most that I confirmed from reading these reports online of other people who were in these programs. Like Jake Barber was talking about how he would play games with one-on-one with someone. I can't remember most of it because I was like 5, 6, 7 years old when this was happening. But the thing I remember the most that stuck out in my mind, because as a child, I was like, what am I doing? But I didn't ask questions because I was a kid, and I'm never the type of conflicted. Anyway, it was this weird, hearing. It wasn't a hearing test. And I know it wasn't a hearing test because there was no doctors involved. There was no nurse. It was a random person that was dressed in plain clothes that wasn't a teacher, that wasn't a nurse. I don't even remember if this person was part of the school. I think it was just a random person that would come. And it was this one-on-one thing where you would go in to like a very blah environment. It wasn't like a kid's fun classroom. So it was like a dull room, and they would give you these like big headphones, and they would ask you, it's so fucking weird. They would like play these tones in your ear, and like they weren't like, again, I'm so sure it was not a hearing test. Because there was no, like, they weren't writing anything down. They weren't, it was not a medical setting. There was no reason for it to be a hearing test. And there was no expectation. There was no, you did well. There was no test about it. It was just, here's these headphones. Okay. Tell me, or raise your hand when you hear this tone in this ear and this, like, it was something like that. And I just remember blindly going along with it. And it felt so like dumb and stupid. And I would be boop, 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 like just different frequencies, like very specific, coherent, like not like a loud, like noisy. It was very directed frequencies. Some quieter, some louder, but not so quiet that it would go out of my range. It was just like, and then there was different pitches, and they were in different ears, and they would ask you to, I think, this is as far as I can remember, raise your hand, blah, 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 and then they'd be like, okay, and then you would leave. No writing down, no, you did well, your hearing's good, none of that, no doctor. So that's all. That's my story about that. That's so weird. And I remember I asked my sister about this after I learned about it online, way before I saw this thing with Jake Barber talking about this program, and she remembered it. She was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember that." What? And then I was like, "I heard there's some conspiracy about the CIA conscripting psychic kids," and this was again. So when I heard Jake Barber talking about this, all these dots are connecting in my head about previous things I've read that were conspiracies as of as of then, and I guess they kind of still are now, but it's more and more leaning like that's true. I don't think, apparently I wasn't selected because nobody encouraged me to join the military. Nobody said, I've never had any psychic abilities naturally, except for with psychedelics, which we'll get into very soon, pretty much now. But yeah, the GATE program, I was adjacent to it. I think I could be. I wasn't exaggerating. I know what I just said happened, but I don't know. If somebody has any further information about that, do let me know. So we come to the topic of consciousness and what it means for if you believe in extraterrestrials, if you believe in aliens, if you believe in the UAPs, and if you believe in Jake Barber's testimony. And furthermore, Stephen Greer, who's been talking about this for 30 plus years. This is like the merging of science, technology, and spirituality all in one. And it literally explains, if you just go along with it, you don't have to fully believe it, but if you just go along with it, it pretty much explains all religions, all supernatural phenomena. Oh, well, there's there's multiple, probably, I guess you could say almost infinite, extraterrestrial civilizations throughout the universe, maybe multiverse, who have evolved, survived, past impending doom, as long as they stay peaceful, which is Dr. Greer's requirement to how you keep evolving, which makes sense. And they just their consciousness keeps evolving with the technology, and they become super sentient, and they're at such a high level of consciousness that they can project themselves through transdimensional, no limit of speed of light, through the space-time continuum, whatever you want to call it. You have to accept that that there's like a consciousness field that just permeates all of reality, and these ETs that have evolved their consciousness in such a way, they have craft that can move physically, but also portal in and out. I don't know. I mean, the amount of information that is unknown to anybody, any human, is immense, but it still, to me, is so much that I'm just speculating on what I assume would be the case if all this is true. And we're all connected. All consciousness is connected, and the science of consciousness, in terms of the public science and the medical journals and the scientific journals, no one has a consensus of how this works, but there have been many alludings to quantum mechanics having something to do with consciousness, even back when quantum mechanics was discovered and heavily studied to develop the theory as we know it today, where they were like, well, if an observer is looking at a wave, or is looking at a system, and then you observe it, and it was in a superposition of states, but once you observe it, then the wave function collapses into a specific one, and before it was just a probability spread out. Now it's here, but it could have been there, depending on. And some people have arguments for, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a known skeptic of anything beyond what the math that only we know can explain, says something like, you perturb the system, therefore it collapses, which kind of makes sense sometimes, but anyway, that's a random tangent we don't need to go down. Quantum entanglement really is a seed. I mean, it doesn't automatically explain that consciousness pervades the universe, but it does give. It's like a seed to how it could, if consciousness is quantum, and again, Dr. Greer describes consciousness as having quanta in and of itself, like electromagnetic force has photons, the weak force has what the hell are they called? I forgot. But all the forces have all the four fundamental forces of nature. The Z, the W and Z bosons or something, gravitons, these kind of things. There's forces, there's particles, quanta, packets that carry the force through quantum systems. And so I guess Greer posits that consciousness has is its own kind of field, and there's quanta of consciousness that I guess can become in entangled states, and then it can traverse distances without. It's all very complicated, but I mean, yeah, that's the gist of it. But this is crazy shit. So let me get into the psychedelic thing, because this is the origin of how my mind is so open to this. So when I was a lad, I was raised in a pretty fundamentalist Christian household, and I went along with it. I was a very obedient kid. I wasn't like immediately rebellious against it. Then I, as a teenager, started experimenting with the devil's lettuce and all that, and my mind started to get a little more open. But I didn't really deny. I still believed in what my parents had instilled in me and what the church has told me and all that. And then I went to college, and I started studying music, and then I started experimenting with other things, but the psychedelic thing would come a little later. But I got just superbly fascinated with physics, and it really started with the biography of Einstein. Walter Isaacson, the famous biographer who does a lot of the famous scientists and other prominent scholars of history. That I just was so inspired to learn about the fundamentals of the universe, and I knew that I had a propensity to understand math and all these things. So I was like, let me forget music. I already know how to do music. It's always been a hobby. The classes are too easy. Let me challenge myself with physics. So I started to, my soft 19-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old mind started to become affected by the very atheistic nature of the thought leaders of the physics community and the scientific community. And I was like, maybe all that Bible stuff was kind of a lie, or, the translations and all the people in between, that the church, the Catholic Church, all these people that, which I still believe is kind of true. I mean, I'm not saying I came back and I believe literally the Bible at all, really. The Bible has a lot of wisdom and truths in it, for sure. I believe that. But what I'm saying is, at the time, I was kind of just immediately almost throwing everything away, saying, this is dumb. The people who understand the universe at a mathematical level know what they're talking about. So it was just that kind of shifting of perspective into the more atheistic, hard science realm. Okay. So then as I'm going through college, I start to learn more about other substances. And the first one that really absolutely blew my mind wide open, surprisingly, was not yet mushrooms or LSD or the traditional tryptamines. No, it was the, at the time, legal sage known as Salvia Divinorum, which is not really considered a psychedelic in the classical sense. So people call it that. Pharmacologically, it's more like a dissociative. But you can achieve the same states with dissociatives as well, ketamine, DXM, all the PCP, if you take enough. But salvia is a specific one. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But the experience is what really... So this, I have to explain this experience just from the beginning to end, because this was my first like true, undoubtable, I know that I experienced this spiritual experience. Okay. So we had smoked, me and my friend, we had smoked this salvia extract that we bought from the smoke shop a couple times. We felt like you feel kind of drunk and a little trippy and weird, but then you come back and it was whatever. But for whatever reason, I was hell-bent on like having this experience that you would read online, all these people saying, "Oh, I talked to my spirit guide" or whatever, and we were like, let's make this happen. So I somehow was able to like take 3 huge bong hits in a row, or maybe it was a pipe. I can't remember. It was some like large piece that I was able to like. I planned on like packing it. I can't remember if I reloaded it. That would have been hard. I just remember taking like 3 huge hits repeatedly after the other to make sure I was just as fucked as possible. And I did that, and then it's hard to like, if I should. Okay, so let's just go with what happened during the experience. I specifically remember, I don't have a vivid memory of it, but I have a distinct and profound memory of encountering at least 3, but perhaps more, separate conscious entities that were, I don't even really have a visual for it. That's the weird thing about salvia. Some people claim they have distinct visual things happen, but it was not the case for me. But it felt like there was like a semicircle of them, and like all of a sudden I was in their presence, and I was just like, and they were just like, and I just remember they acknowledged me. I was obviously acknowledging them, and it was just like there wasn't a language or anything, but it was like a nod of, "Oh, you're here again, huh?" And I was like, "What the fuck? I've been here before?" And just that kind of absolute like mind-blowing, what is happening? But it was very profound. It didn't feel scary. It didn't feel like amazing. It was just very neutral. You're here. We're here. We know you. We've seen you before. Hello, and then goodbye or something. That's like the main thing that I remember. Now, what makes this so profound to me afterwards is how I reacted. This is why I really remember this in the way that I do. As I'm coming back, it was me and my friend on this like futon in my parents' basement at the time where I was living. And obviously I wouldn't want any, like, my parents weren't some, like, as I stated before, fundamentalist Christian household. So they wouldn't, it wasn't like the cool, yeah. It'll make sense what I'm about to say. So I started to come back, and I just remember opening my eyes, and I'm looking at my basement, and I'm like, oh, I'm in my basement. Oh, that's right. Oh shit, I'm me. Okay, yes. Like I had to reincorporate into reality. Like I had to remember who I was. It was like a full ego death situation. And then I saw my friend, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm with you. I'm in the basement. Right. What just happened? And then the first thing I remember, I asked my friend, I was like, someone came down here, right? My parents must have come down here. What happened? As if like they would have just went back upstairs after they saw me passed out on the futon. But that was just my initial reaction. And he was like, no, it's just you just passed out and woke back up. And I was like, I'm so certain someone was down here. Because in my mind, I hadn't had an experience like that. So I was certain, like, oh, I was tripping. So the reason why I felt the presence of multiple conscious individuals was because surely someone else besides my friend, because I remember more than just one other. And like, if it was just one other entity, I would have been like, oh, I was imagining my friend, he was talking while I was tripping and I was envisioning him like this spiritual entity. No, I remember multiple. So that's why I was trying to confirm. I was like, so obviously some other people came down here and that's why I was experiencing these other conscious entities. He was like, no, there's no one here. You were just there for like a minute and then you woke up. And then I was just sitting, I just like probably sat there for like 20 minutes, just like, what the fuck? And then I was just telling him, I don't know, I'd have to ask him. I don't know how much we've talked about that experience multiple times since then, but it's been many years since I spoke to him about that. So I wonder what he would remember from that. But that was the first time I distinctly, 100% without a doubt, communicated with some conscious entities that were not human, or maybe they were, but they were projected in another realm, and the Salvia just ripped my conscious blinders off and I was just projected into there. And at the time, I didn't have like a framework I didn't know I was just like, I guess there's a spirit. Okay, there's a spirit world. I guess that's real. So the reason why I bring that up, as I was saying before, how I would have been an atheist or something like that, that experience was the first concrete foundation for preventing me from ever believing that, forever thinking that there's nothing beyond this tangible realm, because it was so fucking profound that these entities were so more real than my friend that was sitting next to me when I woke up at the time. Yeah, I mean that, and that's just the first time. I mean, how long has this been going on? I almost feel like I shouldn't keep going because I have two more. I'll touch on them. The other two, I mean, since then I've had many psychedelic experiences, but there were two more profound near ego death experiences that I've had with LSD, and they're a little, and DMT, but DMT is so fast it's harder to grasp. But before I continue, aside from not being an atheist, hold on, let me fix this. This is pissing me off. I'm wearing this headband and my hair isn't. It's slipping off. Okay. Aside from not making me not an atheist, I've come to think and believe that those three entities that I was communing with could probably have been some NHI, whether they're from another galaxy or just transdimensional. I don't know the details, but they did not feel like your average human consciousness. They felt very powerful, and they were peaceful, they weren't angry, they weren't mean. They just acknowledged me. So now when I think back on that, I'm like, oh, if I'm to believe this extraterrestrial spiritual higher consciousness theory that Stephen Greer purports to be real, then I must have, that's what I must have been seeing. That's what I must have been experiencing, some kind of NHI. So that's what I've come to believe. And furthermore, everyone else that has those types of spiritual experiences with entities in particular, on any other type of drug, hallucinogenic, I would tend to believe now these states of mind can be achieved via meditation, CE5, whatever, the psionic thing that Jake Barber's describing. But the psychedelics are kind of like a cheat code to just chemically trick your brain into allowing all of that download to be possible. So that's what I believe, straight up. And it's strange to me that people don't talk about, like, I just don't, again, as I mentioned before, not that strange that people like Jake Barber wouldn't say, oh yeah, I also took acid. And that's because most people, when they hear, oh, you were tripping on drugs, then that's not believable by default because you were on drugs. But if it's real, I mean, is it, what's more real? A hallucination that I took drugs that you know causes hallucinations, or just a story that you said you summoned something with your mind? You know, I don't know. Like, they both seem as equally unbelievable. If at least the drug is like a chemical, tangible thing that you know causes hallucinations. But as I say, I would go so far as to say they're not hallucinations because they feel just as real as reality, if not more. And I will talk about the other experiences I have, but I remember, I want to play some more clips from the Jake Barber interview about the spirituality of the Akon experience that relates to the psychedelic experience. Let's see what he says.
Oh, I felt like something connected with me. I felt like something had tuned in to me and my soul and was providing me some sense of guidance on what to do and how profound what I was doing was. And whatever that force was since that night, it has stayed with me. And as crazy as this sounds, it's what's guiding me now. And it's what's providing protection for me.
It's changed your life.
It's changed my life.
Do you think it's made you a better person, that experience?
It has made me a more sensitive and aware person, which I think all of us would be better people.
Okay, so some of the stuff he said there, if not all of it, was already in the first iteration of the NewsNation video. But I wanted to bring it up again because of how it relates to the psychedelic experience, particularly the ones I've had. Excuse me. Oh God, I'm sorry. So he talks about how profound it made him feel about what he was doing. Now, what he was doing, of course, was picking up a potentially alien craft or whatever. So that in and of itself, it kind of makes sense. But the way that Salvia made me feel, the way heavy doses of mushrooms or LSD or DMT make you feel, it feels like everything that's happening to you is so unbelievably profound, even if it's the simplest thing, like sitting in your chair, which is a specific experience that I will start talking about as well. And then, and this is all just through the craft transmitting this emotion to him. He's not on any drugs. Obviously, he's piloting a helicopter for a very important, sensitive mission. And then the other thing he talks about is how it changed his life and it made him a better person, which I would also argue happens when you take, unless you're someone who's prone to like schizophrenia and you lose your mind after you take a high dose of a psychedelic drug, then it might not make you a better person or live a better life, but it might change your life for the worse. Thankfully, that hasn't happened to me. Don't do that if you have the propensity, and especially if you're young, because you shouldn't be fucking around with your brain development. Let me just make sure I say that. But yeah, it exposes you to this spirit. It just forces you. The psychedelics force you into a spiritual state that you can achieve through transcendental meditation or alien crafts. But the chemicals, your brain has a doorway to unlock, and they're there, and the chemicals exist, whether they're synthesized or taken out of the fungi or the Mimosa hostilis root and mixed with the whatever the other plant that has the what's the inhibitor? The inhibitor. You know what I'm talking about if you know. These things just for like the whole concept of it makes me wonder, and that is a philosophical podcast in and of itself. Though, why, if you accept the NHI theories, and then you have to accept that, and if you've done psychedelics, you've had that experiential knowledge to know how significant and profound it is. You must incorporate that into how the NHI either works through your consciousness, how the psychedelics affect your consciousness to allow you to tune into that higher consciousness realm, or maybe there's probably implications for potentially engineered life through the psychedelic. There's all those the stoned ape theory, all this stuff. But I won't get into that because that's going to be way too long. Let me talk about the other two experiences I had. I've had many experiences, but the next two that I can remember are the other most spiritually specific. And those are two with LSD. The first time I did it, actually no, the second time I did it, the same friend. We took 2 tabs instead of 1. I had already taken 1 by myself to test it, and it was a great time. No crazy ego death stuff, but just like trippy, classic acid stuff by myself in my apartment, which was insane to do, but I'm an insane person, so it is what it is. And then my friend came over, and he was like, let's take 2. I'm like, all right, the 1 was pretty strong, let's try it. And basically, it was the first time, aside from that Salvia experience, where I felt like I was losing, except it was actually worse because the way acid has that very slow come up, you have to kind of feel the transformation happening. You feel yourself losing your mind instead of being instantly ripped out without having the chance to try and think about it. So it's way scarier. And we both pretty much fully lost our minds. We were like brought to the brink of ego death, so that everything is just terrifying. We're like, why are we losing our mind? I don't know. And by the time like we ended up on the other side of it, just having a good time tripping, we were just like, we got through it. That was crazy, right? But so it didn't get like too wild, but I do remember a very specific sensation that I had at the peak of it, which, by the way, we were both just in silence. I don't even think we were listening to music. We were just trying to hold on for our dear lives of mental sanity. And I just remember sitting on a couch and just frozen and having the specific sensation that I was feeling every single emotion that everyone has ever felt ever. That's the best way I can describe it. It was immense terror, tragedy, sadness, grief, coupled with amazement, awe, joy, profoundness, beauty, all in one. I just have this distinct memory of being like, why am I feeling all the things at once so intensely? And that stuck with me. And what brought that back to my memory again was when Jake Barber started talking about how he felt the combination of deep sadness and beauty, and while he's interacting with this craft. So again, just more similarities. So something's going on there. And lastly, before I go, well, so the last one is the most profound of the acid ones. But before I do, just cursory DMT mushrooms I've done many times. I haven't done enough of them to have an ego death experience really, because they're so hard to eat and I get sick. It's just uncomfortable to eat a lot, so I typically don't. But I've done smoked DMT a handful of times, and similar to the Salvia, but never had as profound of an entity experience. But I have been blasted out of my body, seeing just in a sea of fractals, feeling one with the universe, kind of. And I have had an entity experience where it was a distinct purple, specifically purple, forming out of the sea of vortex of closed eye visuals, and it was distinctly a feminine energy. Which again, not that, femininity does seem to be a theme in the psychedelic entity world, and again, just not that it necessarily has a link, but Jake Barber emphasizes that that there was a feminine energy with that 8-gone spiritual experience he had. But finally, and the more of the profound acid experiences was another time where I took a decent amount, and I was with a friend that had a different friend that I had done it before with, but he wasn't doing it at the time, and I think it was during COVID. It was like during the lockdown, so I was just wiling out, and I had these tabs, and I was like, I'm just gonna fucking trip. He was hanging out at my place in New York City, and for whatever reason, he didn't want to do any that night, and I was just like, I'm doing it, so you can hang out while I blast off. And then he left after a certain amount of time. But this time I experienced what I have to call a transcendental meditative state. It forced me into it but not in like a ripped out of your body ego death state, but like more of like all I had to do at the peak of this experience. I was in an office chair like this at my desk. All I had to do was close my eyes and focus, and it made the boundary between pure meditation, transcendental meditation, and just being awake, like there's barely any. There's a thin veil. All I had to do was close my eyes, and immediately everything was one. I could not distinguish myself from the chair, from anything I was hearing. It was all a single thing. It felt like a unified consciousness. Everything was one. There was no separate entity. All I had to do was close my eyes. But if I opened them, my visual field was fucked up, but I wasn't so far out that I was permanently there until it wore off. So if I had opened my eyes, I could be like, oh yeah, I'm still in the room. But I guess now I'm trying to remember how I was relating to the ET stuff. Not really. I guess it's just one of the more profound things where it puts you in what I'm trying to say is it puts you into that that truly transcendental meditation state that Dr. Greer describes that you have to get to summon these beings. Now, fortunately, if I had known at the time about the CE5 protocol, I would have been like, we're going to the roof, I'm summoning them. I don't know how the ETs would feel if I was if someone is on lysergic acid diethylamide, I don't know. That's more of a joke. I don't think it matters. I think it's just more of an eroding of the barriers of the neural networks that wall off your innate consciousness. I don't know. The theories of the science of consciousness are not well established. Dr. Greer seems to know everything, though, the way he talks about it. And I don't blame him, because he clearly has had many profound spiritual experiences himself without the use of drugs. I don't think he's mentioned psychedelics once any time I've ever heard him talk. He just naturally gets into those states somehow. And he, that's his whole theory. But he speaks about it like it's real. And if you have those experiences, you're not gonna waste your time saying, I think this happened. Like, no, when you feel that, you know it happened. So I get it. And this is why people call him a kook and like, oh, he's talking about communing with entities from other galaxies. He's a crazy person. Well, I mean, you can call him schizophrenic or something. He seems very intelligent and accomplished and put together, and he's living a life in society, so he can't be that schizophrenic if he is. And yeah, I mean, I don't buy the whole he's crazy thing. I mean, he is in a way, but in the good kind of crazy. Let's just say that. There's some, I don't know if I should keep going. This is going way too long, and I have a whole more things to talk about Stephen Greer, because he did, as I mentioned before, he did a podcast talking about the more detailed Jake Barber stuff, and go watch it if you're interested. It's more fascinating Dr. Greer stuff. Let me just wrap up on more general philosophical thoughts. Religion. That's what I was gonna make the connection back to religion. So if you follow this train of thought that extraterrestrial consciousness, super advanced, evolved consciousness that is basically in the state of nirvana or whatever, by the way, just has always been known by the Eastern religious or spiritual rather, Buddha, Hindu, those kind of religions where they're very meditation consciousness forward. They describe in a very specific traditional way based on their customs and their language at the time. And it always comes back to Dr. Greer somehow, but that's just how it is. He uses a lot of the Eastern philosophy and terms in the CE5 protocol and all that, which makes perfect sense. But yeah, the stories from the Bible, angels, all of these spiritual religions based on the ancient texts would not surprise me at all if it was direct intervention from extraterrestrial consciousness or them. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh boy, I'm about to go on another hour-long tangent, so I probably shouldn't. But a main point is the supernatural. I've always thought this ever since I had the psychedelic experiences and also studied physics. Supernatural phenomena, paranormal, whatever. If you experience it in a real enough way, and people who have experienced it, even if you haven't experienced it, and you believe them and that sort of thing, those are all. It's not supernatural. I mean, we call it supernatural, but it's really natural. We just we don't have the right scientific language or mathematical or whatever neurological conscious science language to describe it. So we just call it supernatural, but it's all real shit. That's what I've always thought in my mind for the past several years. That's just, a little tidbit of my thoughts, which I'm sure, not that it's an original thought. I know many people already subscribe to that. So yeah, I don't know if I want to keep going, but you know what? There's a couple clips from the Jake Barber. I'm not going to go into the Stephen Greer podcast clips. They're more, go watch it, the episode. It's only an hour long. But the Jake Barber interview, he has more things that do relate to Mr. Greer, Dr. Greer. I always say Mr. by accident. Dr. Greer. And on the message of spiritual and stuff. Well, let's see what he has to say.
In the course of your high-value target investigation, you met Dr. Stephen Greer.
Yeah, I did.
What was the purpose of meeting Dr. Stephen Greer?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, you can say what you want about Dr. Greer, but the guy's been 30 years ahead of everyone else on a lot of the details of this subject.
So a lot of what he says is correct.
To me, he's like the Bentwaters. Like, we had everything we needed in 1980, and now we're fishing around for morsels of that. This guy, he's been ahead of everyone. And what I find quite funny is the one thing he gets the most shit for is the one thing he's probably most right about, and that is his CE5 protocol.
So CE5 is when he uses meditation and he claims it engages telepathically with the phenomenon.
Yeah, that's his term for it. Like, we don't use CE5. We don't use Dr. Greer's protocol, no to other people in the program or subsequent programs.
So CE5 is real.
Yeah, if we're going to use his term, I'll tell you what is real is the ability to go into something like a meditative state and summon UAP and pilot UAP.
So we have Jake Barber saying that he knows Dr. Greer and that he's been ahead of the game for 30 years. And the thing he's most right about and he gets the most shit for is the CE5 protocol, although they don't call it that in the military and in the programs he was involved in. But it's basically what they've been doing, just in a different flavor, but the same fundamental principles of contact, of initiating a conscious connection with other consciousness from offshore, off planet, whatever you want to call it, or they are on the planet but be hidden from sight. So that's fucking awesome. It's so cool. I fully believe this. I want to fully believe it. Obviously, I can't know for sure. But when I do a CE5 protocol and I experience it in this way, maybe I'll take some chemical aids to, I don't know, that might be I should consult with someone that knows about that. And in case I end up having a psychotic break. Jokes. Yeah, so a couple things more about I won't go fully into the Greer thing as I plan to, but there are some interesting just points about it. Yeah, Dr. Greer, he's an extremely deeply spiritual person when you get to really learn about all the things he talks about, and that's why most people say he's a kook and he's crazy. He speaks about it with such conviction and seriousness that it's like, I think I already mentioned this earlier. I've been talking for so long. I may have forgotten, but yeah, he's too woo-woo for the average UAP enthusiast. And I'm not saying he knows everything, and he may be flat out wrong about some things, but when you're talking about spiritual / higher consciousness aspects, there's no way you can know that he knows what he's talking about, or that he can even know what he's talking about. He just feels it in his soul because of his experience. It's all experiential knowledge. You literally cannot learn his experiences. You have to experience them for yourself. I take his word of his experiences because of the amount of time he spent, his consistency of his stories about it over the decades, and all of his appearances on the media over the decade. I mean, since the 90s, it's crazy. This guy, he's the OG, like Jake was saying. It's wild that this is all coming together, and this is why I'm so into this now. Interesting, hilarious. From an outside perspective, if you watch the CE5 Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind documentary film he put out, and you really listen to all the other documentaries that he appears in where he talks about this, when I say this, I'm not saying I call it this or think it should be called this, but I just think it's a funny analogy. I feel like outsiders and skeptics would call CE5 protocol and those ceremonies, these groups he holds, they're kind of like alien seances, alien prayer meeting, because they do rituals and mantras, and 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 more than addition to like a seance, it's also kind of like a medium, like well that is a seance. That's not what I meant. Like ghost hunting, that kind of thing, where you're trying to like it literally kind of sounds like that at times. But I think that it's the same kind of paranormal phenomenon, but it's a more of a science base. It's not science in itself, but it's based on more logical science. It's not like, oh, spirits from the afterlife contact me. It's extraterrestrial life forms that have evolved in the universe contact. Like, that's more scientifically logical that would be the case than spirits from the afterlife. You know what I mean? So I just think that's a funny thing. And one more clip from the Jake Barber interview, and then I'll wrap it up.
Whatever and wherever the intelligence is that's behind those craft, it seems friendly, benevolent.
Benevolent, yeah.
In fact, loving?
Loving. It's, if you want to connect with it, if you want to have a relationship, and if you want to see stuff flying in the sky, you need to be channeling a loving energy. That's
I find
just
that
the way it
quite
works.
beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
So beautiful. It's loving. You need to be channeling a loving energy for it to work. Again, it's what Dr. Greer says. It's all about love. It's all about peace. Going back to religious things, Jesus Christ, one of my favorite religious historical figures. Some people say he wasn't a historical. Yeah, I think he was. His teachings, love, 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 love. God is love. Love your neighbor. It's all about love, peace, and love. That's what Dr. Greer is all about. Jake Barber saying the same thing. In order to contact the extraterrestrials, blah, blah. Jesus was an extraterrestrial or alien hybrid or whatever. God is NHI, all of these things. This is what I believe. I worship the NHI. All hail. No, but I'm very serious. I'm not even kidding. I'm not fully literally, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so to wrap it up, let me just do one more devil's advocate against Dr. Greer. And I don't believe this, but I've been doing mental thought processes of what if he's a fraud or what could it possibly be? And the best thing I could come up with, aside from like he went down this rabbit hole and then went like actually schizophrenic crazy and believes this, which I mean, whatever, but so many people are behind him and grouped with him, and it makes so much beautiful sense that I choose not to believe that. And I will know for sure when I have a CE5 experience, which I intend to do. We'll maybe do a video, but another thing he says, you don't want to, the ETs don't like if it's for selfish gain. So making a vlog for views about it probably isn't the best idea for the best outcome. But is he a cult, an alien cult leader? These are the only things I can come up with. He's not making boatloads of money unless there's something I'm not seeing. The CE5 app is $10, which, I mean, is he really making that much money off it? He has to pay developers. Everything you do in this society costs money. If you're devoting your life to this subject, you have to charge money for some work that's done. It's completely understandable. If the app was $1,000 and he was selling like devices that were like $10,000 that were like, you can connect to the ETs even easier with this device for $10,000, then I would be like, well, that's a little, but no, none of that. If you go on his website, There's no like there's no like advertisements for sale, this and that. There's a donation button, but who doesn't accept donations when you're doing something that's about peace and love and trying to spread? I mean, churches, they will live off donations. This is how this stuff works. You need money to survive in society. Assuming he's not already a billionaire, So again, and he was a doctor. He used to, assumedly, he made decent money when he was a doctor, and then gave that up to pursue extraterrestrial spiritual conscious beliefs that make him look crazy to 95% of the population. I can't figure out what would be about him that would make him a fraud or a grifter or whatever. So I believe him. As of now, I think he fully believes what he's talking about. He believes in it. He's trying to spread a great message, which is peace, love. Don't attack the ETs. Spread love. Be a peaceful civilization so we can achieve the technologies that we should have already had, but the government ruined it with their greed and their power. All these things, the rabbit hole is so much deeper, and it's a shame that I can't keep my thoughts coherent enough to, which is an important thing to do for CE5, so I need to train, but to not have this go as long as it is. But I'm still getting used to doing this, especially by myself. It's hard, but I think I'm getting a little better at organizing myself. I just get on tangents and so many things. There's just so many things to talk about. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you've stuck around this far, shout out to you. Thank you so much. Hit the like button, leave a comment. And whoever, if someone isn't gonna like this, I don't think they would be here at this point anymore, so there's no need to address that. But if you don't, then leave a hateful comment for the algorithm anyway. I'm gonna keep looking into this stuff, and next week, who knows, there might be some more. I mean, there's more NewsNation videos that I haven't fully watched yet that are newer people, but not as monumental as Jake Barber, at least as advertised. But who knows what'll come out in between now and then. Maybe the full-on disclosure. We'll see. Peace and love, as I've always said, but now I mean it in the sense of the extraterrestrial high-level consciousness. Peace and love. We allow you into our hearts and minds. Amen. Yeshua. Allah. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. A good week. Talk to you next time.